go well if you lay around and don't have work. We are to work to enter into that rest with Him. Work to enter rest. It's sort of like, I was struggling this last week. I was kind of catching a cold, and then when you lay down, my nose was running. Not around the room, but anyway. And I don't know about you, how do you need to sleep, but then it's wanting to drip a little bit? How does that work for you?
It doesn't.
And if you try really hard to sleep, how does it work?
It doesn't.
Try to sleep. We're going to sleep now. The harder you try, it doesn't work. Enter into God's rest. Part of us, we just have to just sort of relax and trust and use and exercise different muscles like faith and not weird efforts. Sometimes trying hard actually prevents us from sleeping. Trying too hard may actually hinder your progress. It's a fight of perseveringly pursuing God. Isaiah, day and night, they keep at it. This is God talking about His people. Day and night they keep at it. Calling out, reminding God to remember. They are to give Him no peace until He does what He says. Give God no peace until He does what He says in your life. How many have heard that your life's going to be better because of Jesus? That you're going to have joy and peace and happiness and hope and love and all the great stuff, right? It's going to happen. That if He is in the center of your life, you'll be able to deal with things. You're not going to fall down like the house that's built on the sand because your house is built on the rock, and you're going to be able to stand, right? How many have experienced all that? How many understand all that? Well, talk to God. Call out to Him. Remind Him to remember that He said what He was going to do in your life. If you asked Him in your life, give Him no peace until He does what He says. Give God no rest until He comes through. Perseveringly pursue God on these things. These are other this next one is a translation of the same thing. All day and all night they will never be quiet. All day and all night. Never be quiet about having God move in your life, in your family, in your spouse, in your children, at your work, with the people you work with. All day and all night, they never be quiet. You who help the Lord remember, do not rest. You who help the Lord remember. Did you know that you help God remember? Now there's a thought, there's a theological issue. God's saying, I want to know that you really want it. Are you really serious with me? And give Him no rest until He builds Jerusalem and makes it a praise in the earth. Give God no rest until He makes praise coming out of your life. Give Him no rest. And there in Ezekiel, God is saying, I look for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap. That's what God's looking. God's looking for people that will stand in the gap to pray. That will stand in the gap between heaven and earth. Stand in the gap between heaven and earth. How many know that in heaven there's joy? How many know in heaven there's not pain? There's not crime. There's not death. In heaven, I look for someone among them who will build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land so that I would not have to destroy it. But God says, I found no one to stand in the gap, to pray, to pursue me. If you're that kind of person, be that kind of person. God is saying, I'm looking for that kind of person. Will you be that kind of person? Will you be that man? Will you be that woman who will stand in the gap on behalf of the land, on behalf of the family, on behalf of the city, on behalf of this county, on behalf of your children, on behalf of their children's children? Will you stand in the gap, and will you be that kind of praying person and give God no rest until He brings His righteousness down. Guess what? God's looking for someone like that. Look at this passage. It's in Luke. Luke 18. Jesus told them a story showing that it was necessary for them to pray consistently and never quit. Pray consistently and never quit. Let's look at some of the things that are here. There was once a judge in some city who never gave God a thought and cared nothing for people. Okay, so there's a judge. Doesn't sound like a great judge, does it? A judge never gave God a thought, never cared for people. Okay, this is a godless judge. He did not care for others. Care for people? It didn't happen. There was a widow in that city that kept after him. A widow. Someone that doesn't have a whole lot of resources. A widow in those days didn't have much resources, maybe didn't have a whole lot going for her, right? My rights have been violated, protect me. He never gave her the time of day. But after this went on and on, he said to himself, I care nothing about what God thinks, even less what people think, but because this widow won't keep badgering me, I better do something and see that she gets justice. Otherwise, I'm going to end up beaten black and blue by her poundings. There's this widow that's talking to this judge who's godless, who doesn't care about people, and even confesses it. And he says, this woman keeps badgering me. This woman keeps talking to me. This woman keeps after me and pounding on me. Then the master said, do you hear what that judge, corrupt as he is saying? So what makes you think that God won't step in and work justice for His chosen people who continue to cry out for help, who continue to cry out for help? So here's the judge, here's the widow, here's God. Is God godless? I'm trying to compare, because God is kind of comparing Himself to this bad judge, right? In a weird way. Because God's not a bad judge, He's a good judge. So He's good. Does He care about people? Does God care about people? He cares about people. He says, isn't it something, this unjust judge is going to be able, will do what's right for this widow, even though he's godless and doesn't care for people. How much, do you understand that God loves you and God cares for you? God knows everything about you, and He's a good God. Don't you think that if you continue to cry out for help for Him, He's going to step in and work out justice for you? He's going to step into your life and work things out in your life. He says, I assure you He will. He will not drag His feet, but how much of that kind of persistent faith will the Son of Man find on the earth when He returns? So one thing that God is expecting of us is persistent faith. I like the way it's said there. Perseverance is faith to the second level. That's what it is. In order for you and I to persevere, we have to have faith to the second level. It is faith times 2. It's not giving up. It's pounding on God. God even says, will you do this? Do not keep silent until I come through in your life. God's looking for that kind of persistence, that kind of perseverance, that kind of person. May the Lord direct your hearts into God's love and Christ's perseverance. God, that's a great prayer. Direct our hearts into your love, God, and Christ's perseverance. Since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. In order to have perseverance, you've got to have faith in God. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature, complete, not lacking anything. When you persevere, God will mature us. And we won't be lacking in anything. It'll push us over to the top. But the seed in the good soil, those are the ones who heard the word in an honest and a good heart and held fast. And they bear fruit with perseverance. Perseverance is going to cause fruit to come into your life. How many want fruit, God's fruit, to flow out of you? It's going to take perseverance. For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent, God said. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not remain quiet till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like the blazing torch. This is God's promise to us. The nations will see your vindication, all kings your glory, and you will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. You'll be a crown of splendor in the Lord's hand, a royal diadem in the hand of God. No longer will you be called deserted, a name or name your land desolate, but you will be called Hezekiah, and your land Beulah, for the Lord will take delight in you. That's in that psalm where God said, in Isaiah, where God's saying, so don't be quiet. Persevere. Plead out to me.
Of all the traits that the winner's edge encompasses, you'd have to say that winners persevere. They're just out there over and over again, and they don't know the meaning of rejection. Rejection to them is target correction. It's a learning experience. It's a temporary inconvenience. Failure is a detour, not a dead end. Perseverance is the key. You can believe you deserve to win. You can feel that you determine your results. You can feel incredibly motivated and inspired. And you can practice. But unless you put in the perseverance in actual effort, all the training in the world won't help you unless you hang in there when the going gets tough. And that's why most of the people I know who are successful have been comfortable with failure. Failure's fertilizer. It stinks, but it sure grows green people. And failure really helps you understand that if you've been out there a number of times, you're going to lose some and win some. When you stop to think of it, quarterbacks only complete half of their passes. Basketball players, a little over half of their shots. Oil well diggers only have 1 in 5 wells. In the stock market, only 1 out of 4 or 5. And actors and actresses who are trying out for a part only get about 1 in 20. But perseverance helps you get through the rejection and get you to the goal that you have. And that's why this key of staying with the program of mental toughness really makes all the difference in the world. I think of the people who've been rejected, and it's an incredible thing to understand. Jacques Cousteau, for example, wanted to be an astronaut, but he broke both arms. And because his arms were broken, he couldn't go to the French Naval Academy and then become an astronaut. So he swam out the failure of the broken arms, and as he began to swim, he thought about going under and becoming an aquanaut instead of an astronaut. He got himself some goggles and swim fins. He swam first in the lake and then in the ocean. And in the lake, he saw that mother water spider. If you've ever seen a water spider, she has a bubble of air between her legs. And she takes that bubble of air down underneath the branch that has fallen into the lake. And she puts the bubble underneath so her little baby spiders can breathe underwater. And he thought, wow, I've had these broken arms. I can't become an astronaut. I could become an aquanaut if I could breathe underwater. What would help me breathe underwater? An aqua lung. I could put a bubble on my back and breathe underwater, and then I could really become an aquanaut, an astronaut in the inner space. You will find that at your lowest point in life, when things are going all against you, But that's the time when you reach deep inside to pull out of yourself the best